Any Mario Kart 7 footage that is not tagged with the creator alongside it belongs to Modern XP, and for the battle mode belongs to Nintendo Central. You know, throughout the entire Mario Kart series, there hasn't really been much added in terms of features or mechanics implemented into the formula itself. I mean, it isn't exactly easy trying to improve an already perfect racing formula that is designed for an item slog go-karting series. Only about 3 big changes had occurred thus far into the series. The driver-passenger feature for Mario Kart Double Dash, which, in all honesty, played a bigger role in strategizing items than racing itself. The bigger variety of kart and later bike options, which are a bit hit or miss depending on the game. And the tricking mechanic introduced in Mario Kart Wii, which was really the first big change to the gameplay formula of the series, since it allowed for more interaction with the environment of the tracks. However, not all track environments could be taken advantage of in this game, and so for their next Mario Kart project, that was to be their main focus. Tired of staying on the lane, Nintendo began adding creative elements to help bring this concept into fruition, and soon revealed the game to a wide audience in both 2010 and 2011. However, by the time of the 2011 reveal, Mario Kart 7 was put on the back burner in order to focus on finishing up Nintendogs plus Cats on the 3DS and Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for the Wii for their 2011 year releases. When those two were essentially finished, they realized the staff they had would not have been enough to complete the game for a holiday 2011 release, which they were really hoping for in fear of a possible delay for Super Mario 3D Land. When deciding what to do about it, they looked back at another near-launch title Mario Kart handheld game and decided, yeah, we'll give it to another guy. Retro Studios was given a part of the development process in order to help finish the game in time, being a co-developer along with Nintendo EAD, though they did a lot of the heavy work when the game was wrapping up production. This is also the only non-Metroid and Donkey Kong game they have dealt with so far, which when looking back, was honestly all that bad. Damn, maybe Nintendo should just start handing out their spin-offs to other game companies. They seem to actually know how to make a game. A few weeks after Super Mario 3D Land's release and a few weeks before the winter holiday week of 2011, Mario Kart 7 saw worldwide release back-to-back between December 1st through December 4th for all major regions. Now, like most 3DS users, I didn't get the console at launch. I was still a dumb kid playing on my Nintendo DSi XL. My first memory of it was way back in 2012, when I was visiting a friend's house and I noticed his older cousin had Mario Kart 7 and a 3DS, which I think was also my first memory and interaction with a 3DS. And I remember after playing with them, I went back home and practically begged my mother to get me a 3DS and the new Mario Kart since I didn't see the title. And with that upcoming Christmas, I eventually got a Nintendo 3DS XL that was pre-installed with Mario Kart 7. Which is funny to think because at the time I didn't know that there was an XL version of the 3DS. I knew there was an XL version of the DSi, but not the 3DS. So for me as a kid, I was living pretty leisurely, having both of the best versions of each respective handheld. At least to me it was. Okay, so before we start, there's one cool thing I gotta talk about, and that is the 3DS home jingle. Every game and application had this sort of sound or voice clip when hovering over their icon. Sometimes they'll spout the name of the game you're about to play or play a small tune that references the game or series in mind. This was a cool feature which helped to make the 3DS presentation honestly feel much more lively. And that same feeling can be said for Mario Kart 7 home jingle. Like, holy shit, does this sound raw as hell. The engine roars, the bombastic music clip, the way Mario's drifting in his car, oh god damn, I remember this fucking blew my mind as a kid. Especially when you had the 3D slider presented just right to make it look like Mario's fucking hitting donuts on your screen. God damn, I remember thinking this was the peak of before game showcasing. I mean, I might honestly agree with that sentiment still given what we now have. But that's talk for another day. Okay, so to first start off, we'll go ahead and talk...
Excuse me, Luigi Lito. I will take it from here, thank you.
I
As usual in the Mario Kart series, Mario Kart 7 has the Grand Prix, where a single player has to compete against computer-controlled opponents in order to obtain the trophies of the 8 cups in the game. The Grand Prix has 3 engine classes, 50cc, 100cc, and 150cc. The higher the engine class, the harder the races will be for you against the opponents. In this mode, by beating the first cups available, the user unlocks the other cups as well as new elements such as the kart's parts, either by collecting coins in each race or a new playable character. By completing all the engine classes available at the start, the player unlocks the... Hey, what are you...
Thank you, you can get off the... This isn't your video, you know! Sorry about that, folks. But yeah, that's the basis of this game as per every other game in the series. Outside of the Grand Prix mode, however, there isn't a whole lot else. You have the local multiplayer, which still is a complete content shit stain when it comes to single cartridge, and the online multiplayer, which actually runs pretty good, but it's nothing to write home about, honestly. There's probably more people on Winfy servers than on Mario Kart 7 servers, if we're gonna be real here, but there's always at least 3 people ready to gear up for a race. Newly introduced is the Street Pass channel. I'm assuming this is somewhat similar to the Mario Kart channel, just rebranded to fit the 3DS's presentation and online format. Outside of that, we have a time trials, which actually does add a new option, that being able to race with 7 other random ghosts, giving you a bit of a more experienced Grand Prix, but with no items and pure time skill. Versus mode doesn't return, which I think is really odd since it's been an established mode since Super Circuit and was in Mario Kart DS, which this game takes quite a few concepts from, so it's just really weird to not have it. Definitely one of the most questionable options to remove. Well, one of. Instead, the menu separates the 2 battle modes into their own sub-menus. I don't know why they couldn't have just put together under one battle mode and be selected before the character selection like Mario Kart Wii and DS, but they probably just wanted to make the menu look big in size since, 3 options would have made the presentation feel very minimal and not content sufficed. Balloon Battle and Coin Runners return as the only battle mode options, and they're about as samey as Mario Kart Wii's version. However, there are 3 things that make this version much better than that version. 1. All vehicles are allowed rather than just a standardized version of 1 or 2 vehicles. This allows for a better customization option from the get-go. 2. Teams are now an option rather than forced. Need I say more? 3. The battle course selection is, in my opinion, better here than the ones we got in Mario Kart Wii. Okay, now this is pretty subjective on my part. And all the newer plus some of the older maps have additional properties that allow you to circumvent a possible cat and mouse scenario from happening. Overall, I like this battle mode a lot, and see it as an improvement from Mario Kart Wii's battle mode outside of the rather mid-retro selections of battle tracks, and the dumbass 2-minute limit for both modes. Why can I not customize the timer? You let me customize teams, but not the damn timer? Well, there's no point in dodging it now. It's on the next screen anyways when entering the Grand Prix mode. Why is Mario driving backwards when it shows the Mirror Cup? Bitch, Mirror Cup does flip, but it doesn't flip fucking backwards, you dumbass moron. This is the character select screen for Mario Kart 7. Not bad, huh? It seems to reference the starter characters from Super Mario Kart, minus Donkey Kong Jr., and strikes a good balance of selectable characters for different statistics like weight and speed. Okay, now let me pull up the real, finished Mario Kart 7 character select screen. For some reason, most likely from the development time, Retro Studios made some interesting choices when deciding the new characters on Unlockables, and this selection is either seen as a unique creative choice by the developers or as a disgrace to Mario Kart representation. Personally, I think the characters here aren't bad additions. Shy Guy, who is finally playable outside of that dumbass single cartridge multiplayer mode. Metal Mario, who finally has representation once again as his own entity after retiring from the spotlight after Melee's adventure mode. Wiggler is just cool, by the way. Peep this dumb bitch! And Honey Queen, who is Actually, I'm not really a big fan of this choice. We already have a Galaxy representer. Why have another one whose introduction to the franchise was literally tiny tickle porn? I also think Lakitu wasn't a good pick either, though I do like his stupid nose rub animation when he's selected. That's kind of cute. So yeah, outside of 2 characters on my bad subjective list, I really like this selection. It's not that bad of a casting choice for these guys. In fact, that's not even the problem with this. The actual problem is the lack of characters in the select screen. You know, iconic ones that have been introduced to the series since Mario Kart Double Dash, like Waluigi, Toadette, Birdo, Diddy Kong, like, come on. And yeah, I know this topic has been mentioned before, and apparently the rush production played a part in this, which is why we got characters like Lakitu and Metal Mario as additions. But for many people, removing characters that have been in the series for a lot longer than most others and replacing them with skin-changed characters can easily rub people the wrong way. It's one thing to not bring back characters like Funky Kong and Rob, since at this point these characters had only appeared in a single game, and outside of that didn't have any games of their series occurring around the same time to do a promotion or tie-in of sort. But characters like Toadette, Waluigi, even the babies have been here as essentially mainstay characters for the series, so it's a very odd choice to just pluck them out in favor of a grayscale Mario and Pokatu. Actually, now that I think about it, keeping the babies out may be just a worthy sacrifice in the long run for this game. Afterwards, we move on to the kart selection screen, and hallelujah, man, they finally allowed for full kart customization. Honestly, I was fine with the way Mario Kart DS did it, but Mario Kart 7 blows every earlier game out of the water by allowing full customization for each kart part. The kart's body itself, the wheels of the kart that go round and round, and gliders? I think we know what environment will be covered in this game. The only sacrifice done by the new customization option is that there's a lot less base kart parts than given, but to be fair, if you want to get technical, each customization is its own unique kart. So you can argue that there are hundreds of karts that exist in this game. It's just up to how you interpret it as such. Also, they brought back some karts from the earlier games like the pipe frame, which I'm honestly surprised took so long to be reintroduced given that it was the standard kart at one point. The barrel train, probably my favorite kart in Mario Kart Double Dash, and the Bee Dasher. Nothing unique about this kart, it just gives me an excuse to show the most raw fucking render ever created. Seriously, I fucking love this render. If there was a definition for the term goes hard, it would just be a picture of this render. And every game that has the Bee Dasher from here on will be talked about just so I can show this render. Now for the cup selection, it's kinda iffy. On the one hand, you have a great selection of new courses, probably the best lineup so far considering that there isn't a single track that I dislike, not even Mario Circuit. But on the other hand, the retro selection is kind of a mixed bag. Like with Mario Kart DS, some of the more simple design retro tracks were chosen since it would be allowed for better performance during races and could fit the size of the game. Like I said, it was a launch title. But they also add a few of the more complex tracks from the GameCube and Wii games, and this is where I'm put in a conundrum because it means that these tracks allow for a less boring run through the cups and also implements a variety of Mario Kart 7's new mechanics on the course layout. But up to this point in the series, it also meant that these tracks were going to be a 7 only retro track, and given how the next game turned out, oh boy! I know this got debunked with Mario Kart 8's DLC release along with the later Booster Course Pass, but if you've heard how I feel about the style of the Booster Course Pass, then you'd know I'd like Waluigi Pinball more if it was given a real art style towards it like how all Mario Kart 8 tracks were before the Booster Course Pass was added in. A nitpicky argument maybe so, but putting that aside, there are still some relatively mid-track choices and placements. I like all the returning DS courses, and I also like all the returning Double Dash courses. However, the N64 ones are a bit... especially with Calamari Desert being that far into the cup selection. And the very desirable choices of having 2 SNES courses and 1, let me repeat that again, 1 Super Circuit track. It's not even a good one, it's literally Bowser Castle 1. Just kinda leaves me pondering on why they chose it like this. Before you ask, well, what if they wanted to focus more on the newer courses from the newer, more recent titles? And though a pretty good question, it doesn't explain why there are more N64 tracks in this selection than Double Dash tracks. It's not a bad retro selection, but it's a step down in terms of Mario Kart Wii and maybe Mario Kart DS. Though that one is just a bias coming out of my ass. I'm sorry, I know I'm very biased. Otherwise, all these new tracks are pretty freaking epic. I sound like Pete. They all are almost completely unique from each other and take into account different forms of environment during races, like cultural references, neo-dystopian cities, high-in-the-sky spots, and underwater? You can drive underwater? No more shallow water beaches? You get a low propeller on your car too? Oh man, I sure do wonder how many new tracks use this new 3 tracks. Only 3 new tracks use this feature to its fullest extent. Not even the retro courses take full advantage of this feature, with only like 2 tracks doing so and only one of them making it a required route. Okay, this isn't all true. Some tracks have small subsections that contain water do allow this property, like the pond outside the temple in DK Jungles, which feels more like a safety net from getting fucked over by an item, and the pool in Daisy Cruiser. I actually remember first getting Mario Kart Double Dash, booting up the game, and running through 50cc, seeing this track and thinking it works all the same, only to fall all the way into 8th place because the pool isn't a fucking drivable section. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? Most of the tracks here are pretty good at flexing the new functionality of the game's mechanics. These new in-race mechanics include the underwater properties, which turns your kart into submersible via propeller, allowing you to maintain most of your speed underwater and allowing much more vibrant track design, the addition of wind spots, stuff like air coming out of pipes, a floating Koopa Clown propeller, or these random ass screaming statues, which mostly adds force against or to your cart in wherever direction of the wind force is blowing at, which also plays a role in the final and biggest gameplay mechanic of this game, gliding. Anytime you hit some sort of ramp with a blue boost at the end of it or hit some sort of bouncing terrain, your cart will flip into the air and pull out a paraglider of choice, allowing air movement which can help with landings, shortcuts, all that fun stuff. I say it's the most important one of the bunch just because of how many tracks use it. Even the first track grants you access to a glide ramp by the second lap. In fact, only one track of all the new tracks doesn't use gliding, that one being Rosalina's Ice World, and 3 retro tracks don't use the gliding mechanic either. 2 of which, in fact, don't use any of the new mechanics whatsoever, N64 Luigi Raceway and SNES Rainbow Road. Despite being newly added mechanics, these kind of terrain-breaking designs have been unofficially featured in earlier Mario Kart games. In Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart Super Circuit, you could drive underwater. However, it was mostly a means to get back on shore quickly since it treated more as a track hazard, meaning it doesn't have any benefits towards it, and Lack 2 will eventually pull you out of the water if he has to. Mario Kart 64 also kinda has underwater driving on Koopa Troopa Beach, but it has to be at a very specific sea level in order for you to not count as offstage or in too deep. Wind was notable as being an in-game highlight for when you successfully pulled off a slipstream, and yeah, that's all I got. There was barely anything involving wind unless you want to count pushback obstacles that were kind of like the windpipes in Mario Kart 7. Finally, you either had huge ramps like in Mario Kart 64 or cannon shots like in Mario Kart Double Dash up to Wii that showed in the air action for racing. Not like you had any control over it, but you were in the air for quite some time and eventually landed in a designated or ideal spot from the starting point of the ramp or cannon. Otherwise, I like these new features a lot since they add substance to a game that has mostly been known for being on the road or ground for most of its track's history, and allows for unique track designs that probably couldn't have been achieved without it. Gliding was actually one of the tougher things for me to overcome. In fact, it took till about Mario Kart 8 for me to actually like the feature, because I thought it ruined the experience of the game. I mean, to young me, Mario Kart was all about the racing itself. You should always be in control of your cart at all times, which is why I was fine with the underwater feature, since it still allowed me to control the cart. Gliding only allowed me to sway the cart around for better positioning when landing, and since some tracks didn't have bottomless pits above their gliding spots, it always made me wonder why they implemented it when they could have just done without it. Especially on tracks like DK Jungle with the already mentioned Temple Pond, most of the platforms in GBA Bowser Castle 1, or even the bouncing musical notes section in Music Park. Like, why would you want to glide over that part? I think another thing that made me upset is that since gliding now took over as the active mechanic for any aerial travel, all the old cannon boost shots from Mario Kart DS were changed to gliding ramps, which kind of made me upset inside since now it meant I wasn't really getting that intense boom from being fired out into a fortress or the cosmos, and it also rids of my invincibility from items, meaning that these spots now really do act like bottomless pits rather than a visual trip. As I mentioned before, most of the retro courses had implemented these mechanics for better or worse, but they also changed a few small quality of life changes on the track layout, like the aforementioned drivable pool in Daisy's Cruiser, implementation of a glide mushroom for Mushroom Gorge, or bounce ramp on the side of Mario Circuit 2 so you can skip the pipe section entirely, and a few ramps on an SNES Rainbow Road so you can avoid thwomps depending on if you have a mushroom or not. However, there does exist some bad quality of life changes, like the aforementioned cannon boosts changed to glide ramps, and probably the worst one being the fact you can't drive in the tunnel in Calamari Desert, which already makes a pretty bland track even worse now. I don't care if it was the worst route to take, it's my decision to choose a dumber road to drive on. Maybe I should stop applying this mentality to my position in the workforce. Outside of the new mechanics, there do exist a few changes to earlier mechanics, such as with tricking, which changed to the shoulder buttons instead of being either on a D-pad or shaking the controller. I love this change, I just think it feels way better to do than moving your finger off the control stick to reach the D-pad, or, looking like you're having a seizure with the Wiimote and getting no registration. Another change is the bottom screen. Just like with Mario Kart DS, your bottom screen showcases either the current point of the map with exact detail, or pulls up a layout of the map on a blackish background taken from something you see in a Windows pre-installed screensaver. The map also displays CPUs holding items, but never items on the actual road, or even hazards outside of lava and shit for that matter, which I think is a pretty odd design choice since Mario Kart DS had this feature, but this game for some reason doesn't. Oh, one final gameplay change is the newly one-time added first-person view, or as the game calls it, steering view, I have a hard time calling this one a gameplay change since all it does is make your driving more challenging if you're not on a straight road path. It does allow you to steer your 3DS through gyroscope, which gives it an additional challenge on top of the already limited view, but otherwise you can turn off this in the options, so it's nothing really special. Hey, at least this shows what the drivers are seeing, which is not as cool as I thought it would be. Damn, looks like I gotta cancel my NASCAR registration. Now that all the new features and mechanics have been talked about, let's get into the actual racing. The feel or control of how you play will be dependent on what kind of kart customization you are using. So for my playthrough, I tried to use as many kart customizations as I could, especially since I was limited on the kart selection I had because I was essentially playing a game that had only gotten about 30 hours in up to that point. I gotta say though that they balanced all the karts pretty well. They respond accurately to my inputs, they don't seem to have that one-off stat that made them stand out too hard from the rest like Mario Kart DS, but still had some adjustments on specific stats like sharp turning, drifting, and off-road that, although not easy to slip past your mind, also isn't something that is immediately noticeable and either becomes a struggle or a complete turnoff. In fact, outside of your descent and rise speed, gliders are pretty much universal outside of the extremely niche world record runs due to some few areas. The drifting is good as it should be, and most tracks, even the older retro ones, are scaled more larger in order to allow for much better drifting capabilities on even their sharpest turns. Also, and I mean every track now has some way, shape, or terraform to trick off of, be it ramps, humps, bumps, or clips between roads and environments. It doesn't matter, you'll find something to trick off of. Another improvement in the racing experience is how the AI works. So if you don't remember, the AI racers in Mario Kart Wii were, well, they were definitely something. Mario Kart 7 goes back to an 8-racer royale, so not only does this mean that the AI is designed in mind with 8 racers, but also allows for much better improvements towards their reactive programming. The AI, even at the highest Grand Prix engine class, isn't too hard to win against. Whether that be dealing with their grand parade of items or from falling behind, catching up to them isn't too challenging and shouldn't take any longer than a single lap to get back to. Hell, even the item bounce is actually pretty decent. And this is including new items and differing item properties implemented into this game, like a longer form of invincibility and only allowing Bullet Bill and Lightning to get rid of stashed items in the item slot. Very good changes, especially since some of these changes were already existing features in the earlier Mario Kart games, which only just tells me that trying to make a race game purely offensive to the point of allowing 4 items to essentially affect your slotted items is just absurd. Now you can still lose items that are held behind you by like blue shells and bob-ombs, but this at least makes more sense since the item is exposed outside of the cart, so anything that hits you also affects it, which is pretty fair in terms of AI balance. Another good thing about the item balance is that some items simply aren't available to the AI in Grand Prix, like Triple Reds and Lucky 7. A new item added to the game and gives the AI probability higher percentages on speed and defensive items rather than offensive items, which is a great change in making sure that hectic item usage isn't commonplace in most races. Now that isn't to say that shit won't go down when it does so, because it can if they feel desired. Like, to tell a quick scenario that happened to me, I was playing on Wario Shipyard on 100cc, and somehow Shy Guy and only Shy Guy managed to get 3 blue shells, each per lap, every time I got first. Not only that, but I remembered I tried to make the ramp near the end, and although I did land in time, Koopa Troopa, who was a bit behind me, managed to throw a bob-omb that ricocheted off the wall right in front of me, which caused me to lose the race. God, I wish I at least pulled out my phone just to record the replay because the race was horseshit start to finish. Otherwise, the AI and item balances, for the most part, balanced properly. Especially since this game still used racers' positions as a decisive factor for item probability. As I said, winning races is a not so challenging feat outside of the once in a blue moon Mario Kart scenario. And as done before, finishing a Grand Prix Cup rewards you a trophy depending on your final position and 3 stars. Now luckily for us, the trophy is what determines unlocking extras outside of kart parts. Star ranks are simply just an additional feature that plays no role in unlocking anything outside of having stars next to your name online. Getting gold trophies on 150cc cups slowly unlocks the 8 unlockable characters. However, I don't know if I was smoking crack as a child or had some extraordinarily rare pack-in, but on my old 3DS XL, which came pre-installed with Mario Kart 7, I remember, and unlike some of my earlier memories, I vividly remember being able to unlock all of these guys by simply getting gold in 50cc, because I never dared to step outside of 50cc, when I was a kid playing Mario Kart. That took up until Mario Kart 8, and that's only when I had the confidence to do. If I had taken on the entire 150cc Grand Prix to unlock those characters, I am for certain that would have been a memory stuck in my head. Because my pride and ego at 8 years old would have certainly kept it so. And also all the memories I would have had flexing it to my classmates the next day. I swear I am not delusional. Someone please back me up here. There's no way I did it back then, and I do remember having every character unlocked, because I often played Wario and Rosalina back in my younger days. Sorry, I'm rambling too much on this. Getting back to the topic at hand, getting gold trophies only allow you to unlock characters in extra Grand Prix cups and engines. So what unlocks parts for carts? Well, it's coins. Oh boy, this is going to be a doozy to talk about. Outside of being collectibles for a battle mode, coins haven't been on the track of a Mario Kart game since Mario Kart Super Circuit all the way back in 2001. So to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of that game, they decided to add coins back to the system. I'm probably lying about the anniversary thing, but given that there are a lot of homages and references to Mario Kart 64 in this game, whether through the track selection or the music, it's not like it's a completely made-up theory sprouted out of nowhere. Mario Kart 64 was 15 years old, Super Circuit was 10, and DS was 6. Why did I mention DS? No clue. Coins play two roles in this game. The role as a collectible point in battle mode, and as a stat increaser in everything else, while also serving as a collectible item for unlockable parts. Now, don't think of them as items you get from the item slot or item boxes. These are purely track items you collect that grant you a slight speed boost as you collect more. Just like with Super Mario Kart, they cap at 10 coins, but unlike Super Mario Kart, you can't gain extra coins as insurance. Your highest is 10 coins and nothing more, not even as a hidden addition. This means that you can only collect 10 coins max per race, even if you get like 20 of them, which in turn means you can only get 40 per Grand Prix Cup if you had 10 coins by the time you cross the finish line. And since the unlockable criteria goes up by 50 up until 300, and 100 up until 1000, and finally peaks at 5000, that means you'll have to end up doing possibly 125 Grand Prix Cups. Yup, you heard that right. 125 Grand Prix Cups. And that's assuming you always get 40 per cup. Remember that the max amount of cups to run through in the entire Grand Prix mode is 32 total. So is there any subset to this? Nope! Grand Prix is the only mode that accounts for coins as a collectible item for unlockables. So any time trials or battle coin matches do not get added to that, which is bullshit. Why do I have to adhere to this flawed game design just to unlock shit? Online doesn't count either, even if you essentially play through a whole Grand Prix-like race. They just simply act as slight speed boosters. Well, okay, I may not be exactly telling the truth because there are some parts that don't need a coin criteria to get. This includes the gold cart, which requires nearly 10,000 VR points online, the gold tires, which requires getting at least 1 star on every cup in every Grand Prix, the gold glider, which requires getting 100 street pass hits, and the golden steering wheel, which requires you to race with gyro controls, assumingly also in first person view. Now, although these things do involve some form of skill to get, the problem is that it still simply boils down to luck. Now, I can't comment on the golden glider's unlockable criteria because I don't know what street pass hits are, but for the golden cart, which is probably the most skill required one, you still have to rely on the online system, which, although better now that it runs on the newly added Nintendo network for 3DS consoles, can still crack out once in a fuck up. The golden tires rely completely on the luck factor of getting stars, which, like I've said, has been tweaked to be more fair, but given my extraordinarily subjective view on star rankings serving as an unlockable criteria, it ain't great, and still relies on a luck factor by the end of the day. And the golden steering wheel is, well, actually this one doesn't have too much luck to it. It's just more so system dependent. And by that I mean if your system gyro sucks, then damn man, I don't know what to tell you. You're just gonna have to miss out on this one. Either way, it's not like anyone else is going to see this online or on multiplayer, so I guess this one's more for stimulating your ego. The only other way to get these is through the coin unlockable criteria, which just... holy shit, what the hell? Really, my main problem doesn't even lie with the coin serving as an unlockable item. In fact, I take that over star ranking serving as much. My issue is just the way they implemented it. There are 4 other ways to get coins in this game with a much faster and simplified process, but they chose to only count those in offline Grand Prix only. That's inherently a flawed system through and through. You just can't convince me otherwise. This really would have been the perfect opportunity to make their other modes like time trials and especially coin runners to be playable for single player needs outside of speedruns or multiplayer purposes. But nope, they wanted you to play the Grand Prix Cups 100 times over. Great choice, you fucks. You know, the more I play this game, the more I kind of start to like it. You know, at the time, I used to thought that this was going to be another Mario Kart game with a few gimmicks added into it to make it, you know, labeled as the newest and coolest Mario Kart game. But as it turns out, in the later games, obviously that couldn't be more false. I don't know, I guess I was coming in with low expectations, but figured out that this game is actually kind of original. In fact, I'm kind of tempted to drop the top 4 status into a top 5 status. It has a great selection of new tracks, it allows for a much more diverse kart selection through customization. The music is excellent throughout, even if the DS and Wii tracks only have slight instrumental changes. It has more freedom in terms of track environment and layout due to the added gameplay changing features. It pays homage to some of the earlier games, especially Mario Kart 64. Oh, okay, now I see why. Okay, on a serious note, I think one of the biggest problems is just that it doesn't pay off with some of the added features. Obviously, the glider was the big show-off of the added features, but the underwater environment isn't even a main environment feature outside of 2 stages. It only acts like an additional sector for tracks with smaller water spots or shortcuts. Even some earlier concepts like half-pipes for tricking and bikes as a vehicle option are completely removed, despite the game having a similar engine and framework to that of Mario Kart Wii. Well, let's see if there's anything else to mention. Well, I guess we can talk about the items. So, around this time, Mario 3 nostalgia was rocking through most fashionable gamer brains around the time. Mario 3 had launched on the Wii a few years prior and was destined for a virtual console release on the 3DS. So many new players got to experience the classics, while older players got to re-experience the games of their time. Pair that with the starting homogenization of the Mario franchise, where most Mario games, regardless of importance of the franchise, had some form of framework for game design in order to incorporate both new and older players of the Mario series, and you had this sort of period of early Mario 3DS games and launched Nintendo games on the Wii U that focused heavily on the design philosophy of Super Mario Bros. 3, before just forming under a uniform brand recognition by rule of company desire. And by Super Mario Bros. 3 philosophy, I mean just remixing a bunch of the songs from that game and referencing a bunch of the enemies and power-ups, especially the Tanuki Leaf. In fact, I'm pretty sure every Mario game up to Super Mario 3D World, besides New Super Mario Bros. U, had the Tanuki Leaf as some sort of power-up or cosmetic design for items, costumes, or enemies. For Mario Kart 7, the Tanuki Leaf is a new item along with the Fire Flower, which is kind of surprising to see it took this long to add in the series, and the Lucky 7. You know, because of the saying. Tanuki Leaf allows you to block incoming shells and bananas on the road, and can knock opponents on your tail. It does require some timing to land, and frankly I consider it worse than just having a banana or shell, but it is neat, sort of the prototype of what would soon become the Super Horn. Fire Flower allows you to throw various fireballs in front or behind you. These fireballs can hit against walls, so think of it as an unlimited green shell spawner, but on a timer and much smaller to hit with. Finally, the Lucky 7 spawns 7 items around your cart, all of which are mostly support or offensive items to get you back in the race. I remember thinking that the best chance of getting this item was that you had to be in 7th place. I mean, it just made sense like that to me as a kid. But as it turns out on the probability chart, you can't even get it in 7th place. Fraudulent. Overall, nothing too exciting here, but that's probably for the best given last time they added much more exciting items in a Mario Kart game. What else is there? I like that they paid Donkey Kong Country and Wario Land homages to their own unique tracks. In fact, some of these newer tracks feel more out of line with Mario Kart's designs, like the heavily underground design Piranha Plant slide and the spacey nature of Mario Galaxy through Rosalina's Ice World, and the Doki Doki design of Shy Guy Bazaar. Okay, that's maybe a stretch, but it does pay homage to Shy Guy's origins and being in a more fanatical Arab Baretis location, and also all the Mii's locations with Woohoo, Loop, and Maka Woohoo. Fuck, man, don't forget that music track used on Rainbow Road. Easily the best Rainbow Road song of them all. I think even Nintendo knows they couldn't top it after its release. The music for most of these newer tracks are definitely so flow, bro. I'd recommend finding the official soundtrack on YouTube somewhere and just giving it a listen. What else? I like the garage setting for the character and cart selection. In fact, I think it's the best of all the cart selection menu designs out of the whole series. It definitely beats being on a portrait or just rotating infinitely on the spot. It actually feels like you are readying up for a race, especially with the customization feature, which I'm pretty sure is what a sports car garage is usually for. Overall, I'd say this game adds quite a lot of new features for the Mario Kart series up and coming, at least so far. See, the thing is, I really came in with pretty low expectations. I know that sounds a bit weird to say, but, you know, even though I played the game a lot as a kid, it just never really stuck out as memorable to me. Hell, I even forgot some of the tracks before I made this video. But still, after playing it, I would consider it pretty close to top 4, but I still wouldn't change it to top 5, or the status of top 4 to top 5. There's just something about those 4 games that really hit it out of the park for me. And Mario Kart 7 does come close, but some of its issues, like with the unlockable criteria and somewhat basic content outside of Grand Prix, does knock it down a peg for me. I wouldn't call it lackluster by any means, especially for a near-launch title 3DS game, and in my opinion, I do think it is better on an overall scale compared to Mario Kart Wii, but when you pay attention to the design choices of some modes and features over others, you can definitely tell that the game was just ready in time to be considered approved by business and consumers at launch. I think what didn't help was the lack of additional DLC. The game has been updated as recently as last year, but most of these were online track patches or just a means to try and stall hackers one way or another. There has never had any form of content to be downloaded, either through an update or a paid software, which is kind of odd because the 3DS was the first of any of Nintendo's devices to allow for an online update and DLC policy, unlike with the Wii and Nintendo DS era. Fire Emblem Awakening and New Super Mario Bros. 2 all got DLC content months after Mario Kart 7's release, so why not do that for Mario Kart 7? Well, that wouldn't matter anyways because the next game does have DLC, and oh, you thought we were going to talk about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe next? Nah. We're going to talk about Mario Kart 8 for the Nintendo Wii U. You see, originally I did have plans to review both of them together, but then after the release of Booster Course Pass, I kind of wanted to do it on their own things. I want to wait for Booster Course Pass to finish, and also there are some exclusive stuff between both games. Some exclusive to the Wii U, others exclusive to the Switch. So yeah, we're going to stick with this one next before moving on to 8 Deluxe. But yeah, that next review will be Mario Kart 8 for the Nintendo Wii U. Until then, thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you can watch some more of my stuff. I do produce some content that you may think is better than this, maybe not, but, you know, it's out there on my channel. Goodbye!
You know that Luigi Lido guy is kind of an asshole, isn't he? Like I'm trying to talk and he just interrupts.